Multiple means of representation. Let's see what this is all about. The multiple means of representation are fundamental to the UDL. This is the way in which we present content to the student. The modes must be different, so that is why we are talking about multiple means of representation. This part is divided into 3 blocks. Let's see what pedagogical strategies are recommended. It's about providing options for perception, providing options for language and symbols, and providing options for understanding. Let's look at each of these 3 blocks in detail. Now let's make a small general introduction. There are students with sensory disabilities, such as blindness and deafness. So, we must take this into account. There are also dysfunctions that determine learning difficulties, for example, dyslexia, and there are also linguistic or cultural differences and other types of circumstances that may require different ways of approaching the contents. However, it must be said that, even without taking into account these disabilities, we know that there are students who simply have more difficulty assimilating information in a certain way and prefer other methods. For example, in musical teaching, different systems of representation are often used. The conventional score can be used, but at preschool age, representations made with the use of iconic symbols are also useful. Informal representation, including body sounds, can have an excellent educational value. This is a very clear example of multiple forms of representation. Books and writing are very useful, but there are many students who are more efficient through other visual or auditory means rather than through printed text. Learning and the transfer of learning also occur when multiple representations are used, because they allow students to make connections, both within concepts and between them. So, in essence, there is no single optimal means of representation for all students. Providing representation options is essential in the UDL methodology. In addition, the most advantaged, most enterprising and aware students should not be overlooked. They too could benefit from the information presented in different ways. We must then move on to the first block, providing options for perception. You need to check the size of the text. Students must be able to adjust the size of the text, that is, if there are visually impaired students, they must be able to enlarge the font according to their needs, even images, graphics, tables, other contents. It is important to use large characters, but it is also necessary to give the student the opportunity to enlarge the text. We must always present the option of textual and audio information available in sign language, text and sign language and video and audio file captions. Even in these cases, with the purpose of facilitating understanding. It is also very important to encourage lip reading and take so-called listening breaks for students who have hearing problems. The contrast with the background, the text, the images, the difference must be clear. For example, white on black, black on white. Don't look for colors that don't offer good contrast, etc. Everything must be very clear. Also the color used for information or emphasis. The highlighter is important to highlight the most important parts. This, for example, is used very often. Highlighting, using the highlighter, even if it may seem unaesthetic, is very useful. Let's look at the font used to present the materials. So, we have 4 types of characters available that are the most used with students with dyslexia. Some teachers prefer comics because Arial can generate some reading errors, since the L can be confused with a capital I and we must avoid this. These issues don't exist with the comics character type. The structure of the teaching material is also very important. The visual elements must be organized in a clear and relevant way, highlighting their informational function, in correspondence with the textual parts to which they are associated and in correspondence with the rest of the teaching materials. The volume, the speed of speech or sound, the student must be able to adjust this speed and the other parameters. We can do it too, that is, by not speaking too fast. However, we must give the student the opportunity to adjust the speed of the speech, the speed or the time of the video. The same goes for simulations, animations, and audiovisual material of all kinds. The transcript of video and audiovisual materials must always be included. It is important that the videos are not too long. In this course, for example, the videos have a short or medium duration, so that the student can quickly review the parts, locate them, and find out what they need. It is equally important to use software with spelling and grammar functions, with particular attention to special conditions in evaluation tests. What are we talking about? To give the opportunity to use software with a thesaurus during exams and also on other occasions, because the student must always be able to use the spell checker, always, at all times. The dictionary must be available to the student, especially when studying a second language. In summary, presenting educational material and the arrangement of visual or other elements becomes an essential issue in the use of multiple forms of representation. It is therefore a matter of presenting everything as clearly as possible, even the transcriptions of the audio track, which are indispensable. The software with spelling and grammar functions is another type of very important tool. Provide language and symbol options. We are talking about clarifying the vocabulary and symbols at all times, clarifying the syntax, the structure, supporting the decoding of the text, mathematical notation, and symbols, promoting understanding through languages, illustrating through multiple means of communication. Specifically, for example, graphic symbols must have an alternative textual description and simplify complex terms, explain difficult concepts, illustrate with the use of examples, etc. Simplification is important. If we are to explain, for example, expressions or equations, we must try to clarify all the terms, ideas, concepts, and reasoning. We must include support for vocabulary and symbols within the text, through hypertext links, footnotes, definitions, explanations, illustrations, translations when necessary, etc. In this way, if the topic you are using has been addressed 2 lessons before, it can be connected through a link, providing the materials with a hypertext structure. You can insert a link and refer back to the corresponding point of the lesson in question. It is also advisable to include in the text a support for references with which it is foreseeable that the student is not familiar or has not yet foreseeably acquired the necessary familiarity. For example, when it comes to some idiomatic expression, academic language, metaphors, a language that is too archaic or dialectal, etc. All this must be explained to the students very clearly and persistently. Now we come to the third block, providing options for understanding. We are talking about activating or providing basic knowledge, highlighting models, critical characteristics, great ideas and relationships, guiding the processing, visualization and manipulation of information, encouraging transfer and generalization. Let's see, specifically, what we are referring to. Concretely, we must reformulate the tasks, include the subtitling of the video and audio files, the written transcriptions of the audio files, the software with thesaurus to be used during exams and at other times, as we have already said, the software with spelling and grammar functions, issues that are also relevant within this block, which is why they are also included at this point. Implement self-affirmation practices and special evaluation conditions. For example, we must focus on evaluation if during the tests and homework in the classroom we are used to transforming them, adding evaluation methods for students with disabilities. From this perspective, it is necessary to foresee these actions and always act in advance and with all students, without distinction.